Ben Shapiro is one of the most popular conservative commentators in America. Described by the New York Times as the cool kids philosopher, Ben's made a name for himself as a kind of debate god, destroying the left one speaking event at a time. He's also known for popularizing the phrase,
"Facts don't care about your feelings,"
framing himself as a messenger of truth, and his opponents as merely being too offended to handle it. Ben's fame, and likewise infamy, has landed him spots on shows like CNN, Fox News, Real Time with Bill Maher, and PewDiePie's Meme Review.
So PewDiePie asked me to review some memes. Memes are this thing where people put funny stuff on my phone.
With his confident demeanor and quick, eloquent speaking, it's no surprise that Ben's grown such a large following. And, for a time, I was part of it. But then I began to analyze Ben's arguments and research his claims to see if they really held up. Here are a few things I found. These are 5 Ben Shapiro fails. Number 1. Same-sex couples in media. When a caller asked Ben how he felt about children's media introducing same-sex couples, Ben gave the following answer.
I think that doing it without warning is a problem. Because if you feel that it's sort of a safe space for your kids to watch PBS, right, and that's how the government sort of purports to push it, and then all of a sudden you are confronted with issues that really are not appropriate for children, because there's no way to explain homosexual couples without the aspect of sexuality coming into play to a certain extent.
I don't know, Ben. Both Arthur and Clifford seem to have done it just fine without getting into that. If a kid's cartoon can easily do it, I don't see why you can't. Here's a simple way to explain why they're together, Ben. 5 words. Because they love each other. Why is that so difficult? Obviously, the relationship is more complex than that, but as you said,
3-year-olds do not know anything. It is your job as an adult to teach them about things that are complex and make the complex simple in ways that they can understand. And when it comes to explaining why mommy and daddy live together, the answer is they produce babies.
Or you could say, because they love each other. I mean, Ben, when you chose to marry your wife, I'm sure love had a role in that. It wasn't just because of her eggs, right? Plus, if your goal is to avoid the topic of sexuality, saying because they produce babies may not go the way you like. Children love to ask questions, so if the reason you give for why a man and a woman are together is because they produce babies, their next question will be, how do you produce babies?
I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you, so I think we're done here.
So, why not give the 5-word answer instead?
What I do think is sort of a sucker punch is you have a publicly funded television show, and the television show suddenly is pushing a particular political agenda.
A political agenda? You mean promoting tolerance? That thing shows like Arthur have always stood for?
If you could learn to work and play and get along with each other.
An agenda is not an inherently bad thing. When a kid's show talks about colors, counting, and the alphabet, that is part of an agenda to educate children. So if you have no issue with that kind of agenda, why would you oppose one for reducing bigotry? Research has shown that positive representations of LGBT people in media can lower negative feelings towards them. So as someone who claims to be against bullying...
First of all, I'm against bullying of any sort, okay? The idea that somebody would beat somebody up is terrible, okay? As somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying.
Why not support media that could help prevent anti-gay bullying? But Ben's feelings on same-sex couples don't end with media. He also has thoughts on... Number 2. Same-sex parenting. During an interview with Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro argues that the government should not be involved in marriage. But, if they were involved, the government should not treat same-sex marriage and straight marriage equally.
Let's take the predicate that government is now involved in marriage.
Yeah.
Should government subsidize gay marriage and straight marriage the same way? My answer is no, because the only purpose for the government getting involved in marriage is the procreation of the next generation and the raising of that generation. And it's my belief that a man and a woman do a better job of raising a child and producing children, obviously biologically, than 2 men or 2 women.
So, it's Ben Shapiro's belief, or feeling, that a heterosexual couple does a better job at raising a child than a same-sex couple. But do Ben Shapiro's feelings match up with the facts? No. According to the American Psychological Association, lesbian and gay parents are as likely as heterosexual parents to provide supportive and healthy environments for their children. And, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, there is no causal relationship between parents' sexual orientation and children's emotional, psychosocial, and behavioral development. And if that isn't good enough for you, Cornell University has a webpage featuring 75 studies which all show that same-sex couples make equally good parents as straight couples do. The research on this topic has been consistent for decades now. What more proof do you want? And sure, while same-sex couples can't have children the traditional way, a lesbian couple can have a sperm donation, a gay couple can have a surrogate mother, and both can adopt. Yet, take a wild guess what Ben Shapiro's feelings are on same-sex adoption.
We've seen adoption agencies in places like Massachusetts actually shut down if they prefer to hand a baby over to a traditional male-female couple as opposed to a same-sex couple. I think that it is perfectly fine and perfectly rational and, in fact, good to prefer, all other things being equal, obviously, a male-female couple to a male-male or a female-female couple or a single mom. And, there is nothing, I think, remotely controversial about that.
So, Ben is arguing that it is fine, rational, and good to favor one group over another, despite all things being equal. That sounds kind of like affirmative action, something which you, Ben, have described as being racist.
So the short answer is yes. I think affirmative action is a racist policy in its general notion. He applied to Yale, didn't get in, and he didn't get in because he was Asian. If he'd been black, he would have gotten in. I mean, that sort of stuff is just racism, pure and simple.
You said earlier that affirmative action as a policy is racist, correct?
Yes. Justice is about you take action, you get what you deserve. Social justice is about you take action, and we may or may not give you what you deserve based on what we think your social group deserves. And that's evil.
So, when a university favors a black person over an Asian person, that's racist. But when an adoption center favors a straight couple over a gay couple, that's not homophobia, that's being rational. This blatant contradiction in Ben Shapiro's reasoning should not be surprising, though, as long as you understand. Number 3. How Ben Shapiro forms a conclusion. On more than one occasion, Ben Shapiro has praised the scientific method, which he attributes to Western civilization.
The vision of modern science, the idea of hypothesis and hypothesis being rejected by evidence, that sort of science, experimental science, is unique to the West. The development of the scientific method, these are accomplishments of a scope and scale that only the West can claim.
So you would think that as a proponent of Western civilization, Ben would apply this method himself when it comes to forming conclusions. However, Ben prefers to use what we'll call the Shapiro Method.
You know, this is something I talk about at religious schools, and I've been asked by, pastors and rabbis and priests to talk to students about, okay, you have these religious principles, is there any justification outside of the Bible says so for why this is correct? And as a religious person who's actually thought through his positions, I tend to believe there is. As a religious person, I believe that God didn't create stupid rules. So if you believe that God didn't create stupid rules, then you have to come up with some sort of justification for the rules that are being expressed.
So in this clip, Ben reveals that he does not approach topics objectively. He already has an assumption, a feeling built in. But rather than put aside that feeling in pursuit of nothing but the facts, he allows it to influence his reasoning. This runs counter to the scientific method. With the scientific method, you only form a conclusion after you've done your research. On the other hand, with the Shapiro method, you start off with a conclusion,
God didn't create stupid rules,
and ignore contrary evidence.
It's my belief that a man and a woman do a better job of raising a child and producing children, obviously biologically, than two men or two women.
This is not the reasoning of a person after truth. This is the reasoning of a flat earther. But for Ben, this isn't a bug, it's a feature. So how can you trust Ben to give you an accurate view of reality? Now, some of you may argue that while Ben may not be reliable when it comes to issues that conflict with his religion, outside of that, his arguments are fine. Well, then how about we hear Ben's take on number 4, American slavery. In one episode of his show, Ben Shapiro reported on the 1619 Project, which delves into the history of slavery in the U.S.
1619, as folks are calling it, is a massive retelling of the American story with African Americans appropriately at its center. It is the kind of retelling that continues putting the calls for reparations in their proper context and makes the absence of a national apology all the more galling. So, in other words, it backs Jonathan Capehart's agenda. There was a national apology for slavery. It was called the Civil War, where 700,000 Americans died. So that seems to have been kind of important in American history.
While Ben is correct about roughly 700,000 Americans dying, he fails to mention that that number also includes the Confederate soldiers. Those people who were so sorry for slavery, they fought to the death to keep it going. Just because they were the losers doesn't make it an apology. Ben's argument is like saying Germany losing World War II is an apology for the Holocaust. Come to think of it, how was the Holocaust apologized for? Well, Germany built memorials and museums, gave reparations to Israel and Jewish Holocaust survivors, and over the years, various chancellors openly apologized. On the other hand, how did the South apologize for slavery? Oh, by creating Jim Crow laws and exploiting black people through sharecropping and forming the KKK and erecting monuments of those who fought to keep black people in chains. Imagine if, after World War II, Germany put up statues of Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, and Göring. Would that be a message of remorse, or would that be a message of resentment? Even the apology slaves were supposed to receive, that being 40 acres and a mule, ended up being revoked. But Ben's lack of knowledge on history doesn't end with the Civil War. He's also ignorant about number 5. Language. In September 2019, Merriam-Webster officially added the non-binary use of they to their dictionary. And as expected, Ben Shapiro wasn't too happy about it.
The polarization of the American public continues apace, with woke scolds doing their best to ruin every aspect of American life. I'm very excited that Merriam-Webster Dictionary has now added the non-binary pronoun they to the dictionary. Because when I look at a book for definitions of words, what I want is a made-up definition of a word that has never been used this way in all of human history, a plural noun used as a singular noun to refer to a singular gender. We're going to use a plural noun.
So, number 1, the word they is not a noun, it is a pronoun. I hate to be pedantic, but if you're going to lecture us about language, you should know the distinction, especially since you kind of write for a living. Number 2, Ben's claim that they
has never been used this way in all of human history
is objectively wrong. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the singular they can be traced back to 1375, where it appears in the medieval romance William and the Werewolf. Further down, they write, since forms may exist in speech long before they're written down, it's likely that singular they was common even before the late 14th century. And, according to Dictionary.com, even Chaucer, Shakespeare, Jane Austen, and other beloved writers of the English literary canon use singular they. Even Ben Shapiro himself has used it. But even if they never was used in that manner, so what? Language is always evolving. The English of the King James Bible or of Romeo and Juliet is not the English of today. The word Orwellian didn't exist until 1950, yet you're more than happy to use that. The word libertarian originally stood for a left-wing anarchist, but you don't seem to mind using the new right-wing definition for yourself.
My governmental policy, because I'm basically a libertarian, is I don't care about that.
Not to mention you began your rant by using the word woke scold.
Woke scolds,
which didn't exist until 2018. It's almost like your issue isn't really with new words and definitions, but more with who they're empowering.
They, according to the Washington Post, is a liberating pronoun for many non-binary individuals. What the hell is a liberating pronoun? How does a pronoun liberate you?
I'll tell you how, Ben. Because language is power. If you didn't believe that, you wouldn't be a commentator, you wouldn't be an author, you wouldn't talk about free speech. Let's go back to that word Orwellian, Ben, because you've used it to describe the new meaning of they.
The social engineering of rewriting the meaning of English words is truly Orwellian crap.
Now, Orwellian is in reference to George Orwell's novel 1984, in which an authoritarian regime develops a new language called Newspeak, which is a horrifyingly limited version of English. In the novel, the character Syme states, "You think, I dare say, that our chief job is inventing new words? Not a bit of it. We're destroying words, scores of them, hundreds of them, every day. We're cutting the language down to the bone. Every year, fewer and fewer words, and the range of consciousness always a little smaller." On the other hand, Merriam-Webster hasn't destroyed anything. They've merely included a new usage of a word alongside the ones already there. So with Merriam-Webster expanding language and Ben chastising them for doing so, who's really being Orwellian here? It's not as if English is the first language to have gender-neutral pronouns either. Plenty of languages like Finnish, Turkish, Hungarian, and others use them too. I guess the darn woke scolds got to them. Long story short, I know change can be scary, Ben, but it's going to be fine. Stop being a boomer. So if you've made it this far in the video, well, first of all, thank you for watching. But secondly, you may be thinking, really, Nate? 5 examples are all you have? Well, no. This video is only the beginning. The thing is that many of Ben's fails revolve around a handful of topics, so rather than compress them all into a single video, I'll be making a series of videos delving into each topic he fails on. So if that kind of content interests you, please subscribe and ring the bell to know when new videos come out. And if you want to help make producing this content easier, please consider supporting me through Patreon. Any amount you can give is greatly appreciated. But, until next time, have a nice day.